99% execution, 1% ideas.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook presented by Power Digital. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 134, and my guest is Avi Moskowitz. Avi is a serial entrepreneur, having spent time building out a business called BeerBazaar in Israel, where they focused on selling craft beers online. More recently, he took those learnings and with a co-founder, they developed PDQ, PrettyDamnQuick, which is helping brands optimize the cart and checkout journey. I've always said that most brands get plenty of traffic, but they need to do more with the traffic, and PDQ is helping brands do just that. Avi offers some great takeaways for the listeners, so I'm sure that you'll enjoy the show. Before we get started, a quick thank you as always to Max Branstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook podcast. Today, I'm joined by Avi Moskowitz. Avi is a Brooklyn-born entrepreneur who's been building startups since the 1980s, blending high-tech expertise with a customer-first mindset. After founding BeerBazaar in Israel, he helped redefine the local beer scene by championing artisanal values and challenging industrial giants with accessible, high-quality craft brews. When the pandemic hit, Avi pivoted the business online and developed PDQ, a SaaS platform now powering checkout to delivery operations for brands beyond beer that now powers over 80 million checkouts each month. Whether in tech or in hops, Avi thrives at the intersection of innovation, culture, and scalable problem solving. Avi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you doing this bright and early, well, at least for me, bright and early on a Monday morning as we gear up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday in only a few weeks. Let's jump right in, Avi. We start the show every time exactly the same way, getting the first story from our guest. Tell us a little bit about, your upbringing, personal life. I know you have quite a few siblings, and we talked a little bit also about your parents and how they were influential in your life.
Unfortunately, my parents have passed, but definitely had a very large impact in my formative years and shaping who I've ultimately become. I like to think that I've adopted and learned from their values, and hopefully my kids will do the same. They were both survivors, immigrants to America. So they went through one of the most difficult periods in history and survived the Holocaust and came to America, not so much as refugees, but as builders and innovators and people that were determined to provide a better future for their children. So nothing more important than our future. Very much were focused on us becoming professionals. Maybe that's a place where I disappointed them, but entrepreneurialism wasn't quite a profession back then. It's what you did if you weren't a professional. My mom used to joke about that, but for the most part, their all their energy, their entire focus was their children, giving them a future, giving them tools so that not only can they do better, but they can make the world a better place. This is something that is inherently part of our values and our culture. Put us to school, took school very seriously. They took school very seriously. Can't say that we always lived up to their expectations. Being the youngest of 7, I had 7 siblings, and being the last of the bunch was a lot of opportunity. You can watch a lot of people growing up, and it's almost a multi-generational thing. My oldest brother is 18 years older than me, so there was a lot in the time period between him and myself, and so many experiences for me to be able to gain and learn from. We didn't grow up in an age of entrepreneurialism, which means we also didn't grow up in an age so much of mentoring. There wasn't a concept back then. It's something I really enjoy doing today, and I take every opportunity I have to share what I know, because I do think there's an incredible value in passing on that knowledge and experience. But I didn't have that benefit. But to a great extent, it's something that I was able to learn because I come from a large family and watching my parents. Effectively, they were entrepreneurial, very much entrepreneurial in spirit, which is kind of strange because they came to America with just the shirts on their back, nothing, right? Literally built everything from scratch. And through uh, a series of unexpected events, my father had an accident. He was hit by a car, and they managed to put together some money, and they actually bought an apartment building in Borough Park in 1957, which was back then. Today, you can barely find a patch of grass, but back then there was actually still some farmland back there, and they managed to buy that home, and it turned out to be an asset that made their lives much easier over time. They had to work very hard to ultimately, pay for it, but over time, it turned out to be something they were able to go back to in their later years. And the way that my parents managed the house and took care of the people, every aspect, I mean, for me anyway, represented all the things that I love about business and the opportunity to build. And at the same time, the ability to be charitable. And, they were real humans to the people that lived in the building, friends, neighbors, and, all these characteristics. And there are so many that come through. So for me, that was a very clear defining aspect of growing up. And I think it was the spark that led to my ultimately pursuing a career as an entrepreneur, even though it wasn't something that people they didn't know what I was. My mother actually used to joke with me. Her first language was Yiddish. So when people used to ask her what I do, she would say, I'm in the Luftgeschäft, which means the air business, because the internet, which is something I've been involved in pretty much out of school. I had one of the first internet service providers, so I've been in this industry for a long time. But she used to joke because she didn't really understand. The internet wasn't what it is today. So when I described it to her, she said, "Yeah, it sounds like you're in the air business." Awesome.
Good stuff. So Brooklyn born, that we have that in common. Lay out for us. You were in Borough Park, and now you live in Israel. So how did you make that move to Israel, and when?
So I've been dreaming. I was fortunate enough to come to Israel after high school. It started off as just 1 year of studies, and I fell in love with the country. And it was a great learning growth spurt for myself to really focus on myself and my learnings, far from any distractions. And it had a combination of studies as well as volunteering. So I volunteered on farms, and because we couldn't afford to go home, so I had to find a place to go for the holidays. And you did that by volunteering. But that period of time gave me a chance to fall in love with the country. And when you think about the contrast between one of the darkest chapters in Jewish history and the birth of Israel and the opportunity to actually have a defensible home, for me, the opportunity was very clear. The proximity of those two incredibly meaningful events in history, being one next to the other, for me, was a very obvious decision that we belong here. I can't say my parents were excited about it because my father had actually passed when I was relatively young, so he wasn't as involved in the discussion. But my mom, she said, I was an immigrant, and the last thing I want is for you to also be an immigrant, like two generations of immigrants. Why would you do that to yourself? And I told her, Israel's really a startup nation. And this was, even before it really was a startup nation, but you can tell that the spark of innovation was something that was natural. It was just part of the fiber, the DNA of this country. There was something about that that really attracted me. So it took me a while before I was able to acclimate and actually do something in Israel, which was the brewery, because as an American, a New Yorker, a Brooklyn boy, this is not a natural fit. I wouldn't come to any country and assume that I can, suddenly acclimate and they'll absorb me as a brother and I'll understand everything and I can go into business. It's actually the biggest mistake you can make in business is just transport yourself. So it did take me some time, and I took that acclimation very gradually. And even with that, I still, for the most part, I'm seen as an American everywhere in this country. Even after, say, about 30 years of living here, I'm still seen as an outsider. Or in New
Right,
York, they used to call it the greener,
right,
because
right.
you're green.
Just you and I have chatted about this, but in the spirit of it's a small world. When I first met Avi, we were chatting, and he's got his last name is Moskowitz, and I knew one or two Moskowitzes, and I said to him, "Geez, Brooklyn, Moskowitz. Do you happen to have a brother, especially with so many siblings, that is a doctor?" And as it turns out, one of your siblings is a pediatrician, and was someone that my kids visited, 30 years ago.
And he's still practicing today.
Small world. So let's dig a little bit into this entrepreneurial, world. Jump to BeerBazaar because that was very formidable. You had done some things entrepreneurially before that, but what was the thing that drove that business to get started?
Yeah, so there was a practical side to it. I had been traveling over 1 million miles, living in Israel. All my businesses were based in America, which made me like a weekend family man. And during the week, I would fly out Sunday and come back for the weekend. Sometimes I'd stay through the weekend, but there was a lot of traveling. And after having done that for so many years, and very fortunate to have my children living here with me, I tried looking for something that would keep me in the country. And technology, by its nature, certainly with the skill set I have, is more focused on the market that we're targeting, which is North America, which means if I went back to technology, I'd be back on the plane again. So I looked after I sold my business in 2015, I looked for an opportunity to do something that would keep me in Israel. And again, kind of forcing me to adapt and adjust to the local business scene, not something that I was it took some mental preparation to do because Israel's not a service economy. It's not everything that I've been involved in is for export, technology and serving other countries. So I had to think long and hard about what I would do. And ultimately it was about building a business that would keep me in Israel. So I was looking at bread, coffee, artisanal craft things, wine, beer. And I was fortunate to have friends that were investors in each of these areas and or folks that had run businesses like that and ultimately ended up with craft beer because friends of mine who had invested in beer previously said it's like liquid gold. I said that sounds interesting and attractive and but I would have to say that the food and beverage side of the world is a different ball of wax. It's not quite the same as anything else I've ever experienced. You suddenly have everything from police to workers and like every possible. It's not a startup in the traditional tech sense, but I have to say it still challenged me on the innovation side, and in many ways there was a lot attractive about it in that you have a lot of frontal time. I had not spent a lot of time with customers on a frontal basis, except I worked in some stores from time to time, but here the entire business was built around real-time reactions from customers. And there was a good learning there. Spent almost 5 years doing it before, ultimately my next chapter. I've been living a lot of my life in 5 year or so chapters. I think there's something very healthy about that perspective. It's not something I'm locked into, but I like the idea of life as chapters and having an opportunity to grow and force yourself to adapt to different situations. And this was definitely an adaptation period. Very fortunate that the business has grown to the extent it has. It's one of the larger craft beer companies in Israel and, distributed throughout stores, restaurants, hotels, and continues to grow in a very meaningful way. So it was a great chapter, difficult chapter, good learning chapter, but something that I'm very happy to have closed the page on and moved on. I'm still a partner and we have, board meetings, but not the day-to-day CEO that I
Right.
was when I started it.
Right. Let's talk about some of the challenges, just in general. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and, the general consensus is, geez, we love what we do, but this is a lot harder than we ever thought it was going to be, starting a business and growing it. What were some of those things that, over the years have been harder for you to get done than you might have expected?
as an entrepreneur, one of the first things is the mindset. You've got to go in with the mindset. This concept, a lot of us are given this general framework of balance in life, and I'm a big believer of it. Maimonides has got this concept of the golden path, which is finding the balance in things. And I'd have to say, as an entrepreneur, the work-life balance concept is something that I don't think really exists. I think you have to create your own, but it's not going to look balanced. If you take a step back, it's definitely not going to look balanced. And I think many times in life, there's something you have to give up. If you really are passionate, I don't like to throw around the word sacrifice because I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything, but it's a decision, it's a prioritization. And that's a difficult thing because there are a lot of things that are important and kind of at the same time, but you find yourself juggling, and sometimes you just don't have the ability because your day is limited and you have one day that comes at you at a time. And if you've missed an opportunity, you don't always have a chance to go back and make up for it. So I think that's a general ongoing challenge is how do we make decisions about how we use our time? And that's one of the privileges we have as humans is that we have that ability. I get to choose, and I love the fact that I get to choose, but there's also a responsibility that comes with it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Power Digital, the growth partner for brands that refuse to settle. At the intersection of marketing, consulting, and data intelligence, Power Digital is where brands go to ignite revenue and scale fast. Their proprietary technology, Nova, transforms first-party data into clear, actionable insights, fueling smarter strategies, better investment decisions, and measurable growth. Power Digital's team of data scientists, creatives, and growth strategists challenge outdated marketing playbooks, delivering results that matter. If you're ready for an agency to turn your data into a competitive advantage, visit powerdigitalmarketing.com. As part of any strong business, growing business, you need to surround yourself with strong people. You can't do it all on your own. Do you have a secret sauce of finding those people, keeping them motivated, keeping them as engaged in the business as you might be as the entrepreneur?
I mean, that's like a bunch of questions to unpack at once. I have to say it's something that I continue to work on and get better at. I've been very, very fortunate in this chapter with PrettyDamnQuick to have Liran Erez as my co-founder and partner. And I think a lot of the health in our partnership comes from multiple dimensions. But I think the most practical thing that we did, which I strongly encourage other folks to do, is I had a chance to get to know him over the course of a year. So I use Liran because while I was at BeerBazaar and building BeerBazaar as a passion project, I asked people like, what's a great agency, the best agency in Israel that builds e-commerce stores? And they all pointed to Liran. And I went to him, I said, I want to build a Shopify store for my beer business. And he said, no one's selling beer online. What are you thinking? I said, let's try it. I think maybe we can do something interesting. And we had a lot of fun. It wasn't something where there was a particular deadline. I didn't have any KPIs, or I was building it really as a fun project where at best it would expand the brand and people would say, hey, that's a fun way for me to learn about the brand. And during that time, I really got to know him. And I said, I told him that if I do anything, when I do my next chapter, and I was expecting I would sooner than later, I'd love to do it with him. And we started brainstorming different ideas. I had a chance to meet him, his family. He met me and my family, and we spent time together to understand what's important to each of us, where our strengths and weaknesses lie. And when you really get to know somebody before you partner with them, it just makes it a lot easier to understand what the red lines are, how you work together, which things. It's not so different than dating. And in many ways, I think it's more challenging than dating because you have to get to know somebody that's going to fit so many different scenarios. And you're going to be spending, if not most of your time, a significant amount of your time with making really important decisions. So these are things that we had the opportunity to do. I had the most time, I'd say, of all the partnerships and relationships I had. I had a lot of time with Liran, and I really feel like that's been paying dividends for both of us. We're very different, American, Israeli, age differences, education differences, strengths. We can go through virtually anything, and we're very different. People might say that about myself and my wife too. So I do like I like that diversity. I
Yeah.
like differences. I think opposites do attract in many ways, as opposed to having, exact copies of each other. So that's one. Take time to get to know people. Unfortunately, in building a company, you don't have that kind of time. You're in a startup and things are measured by hours and days, not by weeks and months. So we had the luxury of that before kicking off the startup. But today, I think we have much less time to get to know people, and you look for qualities. And some of those qualities, like we talk about speed, intensity, and urgency, those are the core values of Pretty Damn Quick. But they're not the only qualities. Obviously, you need integrity, you need many other characteristics. But the things that stand out, I think a lot of folks who join the company say the same thing. Like, I had an expectation that things would be fast, but not that they would be this fast, right? So there's that sense of whiplash that you have coming in, and it's hard because I don't think many people have seen a startup from the inside out growing at this pace. That's not to say we're the only ones doing it, but there's a certain pace, and it's very hard, to jump into this, roller coaster, which is also getting built at the same, we're building tracks as we're going around this ride.
Right. We'll come to more detail about Pretty Damn Quick. I'll ask you to explain it in a bit. But, just again, back to, folks saying, geez, I wish I was an entrepreneur, but I don't really know what to do. You've done it now a number of times in your career. So where do the ideas come from? Where do you evaluate the void in the market and sit there and say, geez, I need to be able to do this?
Part of it was because as a kid, I think my first experience was as a kid, youngest of seven. I did have a built-in customer base in my siblings, and I began polishing shoes. Not because I had nothing to do, but I needed some cash, some free cash. So for 25 cents, I gave them the buffiest shine someone can have on their shoes. And I would encourage them, like with the first scratch, to come back and, let's buff that up again. So Fridays I had a couple of hours, and I'd make a couple of dollars and give me enough for snacks or, other incidentals during the course of the week. And so sometimes it comes because just out of necessity and need, which is fine. I think I'm a big fan of folks who are willing to do whatever they have to do to support their family. There's no shame in supporting your family. There's no job that you would take in supporting your family. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to be curious, and you have to be very willing, from the beginning to say, I'm going to pursue something as if it's the only thing I have in my life with all my power and all my might, and it may fail. And I have to be ready just to dust myself off, get up and just keep at it, because, there's going to be a lot of feeling, FEELING in the process, even if you're not actually failing, and then just keep banging, getting up again, brushing off and keeping at it. So there's a lot to persistence and determination. I think the thing that really sets apart a true entrepreneur is they'll go that extra step, that one more step, that could have been the difference where many other people gave up. But I do think there is a sense of curiosity and humility that says, I don't really know everything. This thing's very interesting to me. How do I learn more about it? How do I get to understand it? And sometimes you're fortunate enough to find the pain just by, it meets you somewhere in life. And Pretty Damn Quick was one of those moments where I got to experience a pain. And the way I experience pain is opportunity. I say, wow, this hurts, and it does hurt a lot. But is it just me, or is there something bigger here? Is there a bigger problem to uncover? And it did take quite a bit of time to evaluate. Liran and I spent a lot of time evaluating whether or not this was a BeerBazaar problem and just unique because we think differently, and the expectations we have, like, why wouldn't someone else have solved it by now? Those kinds of questions. And you really have to spend the time. There are plenty of people who come to me with ideas, and I always say 99% execution, 1% ideas. There's very little shortage of ideas, but you have to have the ability to execute. And execute doesn't just mean doing, it means the preparation for execute. It's the George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. They asked him, like, if you had 5 hours, what tools, what would you use? And it's 4 hours of preparation and 1 hour of cutting. And there's a lot of that's true in life, which is you just need to take the time and think through things and patiently evaluate what all the potential outcomes are before you start investing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many things that you said are interesting. Brands want to be, fast to market. They're happier to be 60% accurate to get it to the market. And my argument with that approach is that if it fails, you don't know if it's about the execution or was the idea, a bad thing, to begin with. So there's lots of conversation, about that. But all right, so PDQ, Pretty Damn Quick. I had the opportunity, the good fortune to meet you and your team through a company that I work with called AS Beauty. Laura Geller is the main brand there. Tell us what PDQ does for brands.
If it's okay, I'll give you just the context, because the way we fell into PDQ is the brewery, and that website that we built actually turned out to meet this thing called COVID in 2020. And the government of Israel shut down all industry in the country except for what was essential. And it meant that all our bars, all our restaurants closed. Beer, strangely enough, and alcohol in general was considered essential during COVID. I think we might be able to understand why now, but the brewery was able to continue functioning, but not the stores. And we made a quick decision that we're going to lean into the online and actually give it a shot for a couple of days. And if there's no traction, we'd have to shut the brewery down. Brewery contaminates very quickly if it's not producing. It's a complicated thing to keep open without selling. So we launched the site, and lo and behold, we were processing hundreds of orders a day, some days over 1,000 orders. And what was shocking to me in the Iran is all these people coming to our site, they go through the whole buying process. They obviously are enamored by the brand and the product. And then about half of them would drop off at checkout. And, we said, it makes no sense. Like, where are these people going? What's going wrong? And as we started looking at it more closely, there really was a bigger problem, not just for us, but globally with e-commerce, where $270 billion a year with a B is lost in checkout every year. That means that people get to checkout, you've got them excited to get all the way to that point, and now they're gone. And when you think about it, and as we thought about it, it makes sense, because in retail, there really is no leap of faith. You go to the register, you pay money, and the entire transaction is a shopping bag. You go home with the item. In e-commerce, you're paying money, but you're actually walking out of the store without the item. That's a very big leap of faith. And Amazon got this from day one. They built themselves. It may not be a pretty website, maybe even ugly, but they focus on the logistics. When you visit the store, everything they're screaming at you is about getting your item. This is when you'll get it, how much it'll cost. All that communicates trust and confidence. And as anybody who's been in commerce anywhere knows, emotion and psychology are the biggest parts of commerce. They're not the ones that are easily measurable. They're not the ones that are easily solvable. But ultimately, the most successful brands have tackled the emotion and psychology of selling or buying. And that was the gap. And unfortunately, there isn't an app for that. You can't just download the emotion, trust, and confidence feature and say, boom, put that on your website. Now you've got credibility. The way you do that is, unfortunately, with a lot of hard work on many different layers. How you communicate, how you formulate your promise, how you deliver on your promise, how you communicate when you fall short of your promise. There's so much there. And ultimately, that's driven by data. So very early on, we realized that we're going to have to be a data company. We have to capture as much of the customer journey as possible. We have to understand as many of the different elements that can affect the purchase as possible, connecting to the carriers, connecting to the fulfillment companies, connecting to even the support platforms, connecting as many components as possible so that we can influence the customer journey and inject that trust and confidence to chip away at that $270 billion problem. So today we're focused on what's called checkout optimization. It's an exciting place to be because there's so much going on in the world of AI and agentic. But if you think about it, it's a pretty straightforward concept. But if you can speak to every customer as an individual and really understand who they are exactly as they are, your likelihood of converting them into a successful sale is going to increase significantly. And that's what we do. We segment customers, so first-time buyer versus returning buyer, subscribing, high value, and so on. We then apply, beyond the segmentation, we provide personalization, so you can actually personalize the journey for each of those segments. And the third pillar of our business is testing. We then say, okay, we're making assumptions here, but what actually happens when we do this? Because the only way you can improve is if you can have an empirical way of evaluating whether or not this is actually making things better or worse, not just guessing. So that's what PrettyDamnQuick does today. We're very fortunate to serve over 300 customers, processing millions of checkouts a month, learning from every single checkout. Yeah, it's been a really fun ride.
How do you differentiate yourself, Avi, from other companies that are out there that claim to do what you do? How then do you get brands to say, to understand that, yes, we're different and we bring a different solution perhaps to the table?
So I'd say at different stages of the business, there are different challenges. Day one, we have no reputation, right? So I only have my own reputation. Iran has his own reputation, but we very quickly set the tone for the business and saying, we stand in the shoes of merchants. We ourselves are merchants. I still today own an online business. We ourselves are merchants. We say this all the time in the business. As a matter of fact, there's a carpet on the entry here that says you're stepping into the shoes of merchants. It's a mindset that I think becomes very clear to anybody we interact with, that we are focused on the merchant success. Now, what else is there, right, besides merchant success? Well, Amazon actually is not focused on merchant success. And if you look at their behavior, they're very clear, and they do this in a great way, that their ultimate success is measured by the customer. And that gets confusing because sometimes what's best for the customer can hurt the merchant. You always want what's best for both, but there are going to be times where you have to align. You have to choose, who is it that you're supporting? Who is it that you're serving? We serve the merchants. We believe that by properly serving merchants, they will properly serve their customers. But ultimately, our success is built around the reputation and trust that we've established, that we really care about your business. Something happens, I'm the first to pick up the phone and say, something went wrong. If I screw up, I screwed up. We're humans, right? The idea is that we're going to win more than we lose. And if something goes wrong, we're there. I'll stop everything and make sure that we correct course and do what's necessary. We also learn quickly from our mistakes. And as a collective, you find yourself in a much stronger position by failing and learning versus never failing. So you want to fail in a way that fail fast and fail small would be my motto. But there's nothing wrong with embracing failure. I've learned the most through failure in life. And I think in small ways, that's something that we need to be continually comfortable with, curious about. I would even say embrace it, but do it in a healthy way. I think that's what stands out for PDQ is the Iran and I embrace that. It's a find your way to yes mentality, right? That's number one, right? That generally the mindset is yes and, as opposed to no or not sure. We'll find our way to yes, and we'll work together with you to get there. And at the same time, looking for partners that understand that we're trailblazing. The stuff we're doing that's literally bleeding edge, which means that sometimes things won't work out, but we're in it together, and we're going to get you to the same place we want to get to, which is winning. And that's what the partnership means to us.
That's great. Good stuff. Really good story. Thank you for sharing. We're down to the end of the show, Avi. We do a 2-minute drill, 7 questions, 1 word answer. Are you ready?
Yeah, fire away.
Okay. A brand that you admire or that inspires you?
Toomey. I think Toomey does a great job. I'm on my fourth or fifth bag with them.
Well, a million miles, a million miles. You need a few
About
bags there, right? Favorite app on your phone?
That's easy. That's Spotify. I love podcasts. Great learning tool. Wow, it's like a library in my pocket.
There you go. Last website other than Amazon that you shopped from?
Probably Uniqlo. I think I just bought some t-shirts there the other day.
Something that you're not good at but wish that you were?
Probably more languages. I'm a big fan of languages. I know three, but I really feel like it's an unlock. I wish I had more.
A charitable organization that you're passionate about?
So many. But JGIVE, JGIVE, I've advised for them, and they're really an awesome organization, a tech first organization. So they really empower and make it really easy to contribute and also benefit.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
That's a great one. I'd say photographic memory.
Other than family, what's your most prized possession?
I'm going to say wine. I have a nice wine collection. I
Okay.
enjoy it. It's more a hobby, but yeah, it's not so prized, but something I enjoy as a hobby. But family comes first.
Avi, where can people reach out to you on social media should they like to?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I'm really accessible, happy to help anybody in any way. So don't hesitate. I really do feel I'm a big believer in pay it forward. So if I can be helpful in any way, please don't hesitate.
That's great, Avi. Thanks so much for the time. Good story. Have enjoyed getting to know you and to hear about what got you to PDQ.
Same here. Thanks for the opportunity, Maury.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Avi Moskowitz for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, if you plan to start a business and have a co-founder, it's like a marriage, and you'll likely want to date a bit before you venture out together. Avi speaks to the time that he spent with his PDQ co-founder, Liran, before they even started the business. They got to know each other well. They had complementary skill sets that have allowed them to bring each a unique perspective to the business. And number 2, if you're going to be a startup person, there are some characteristics that you must have: curiosity, humility, drive, the ability to fail and get back up and start again, and the ability to sacrifice everything else for the pursuit of the business. And number 3, patience. Avi spoke about his George Washington chopping down the cherry tree analogy. If you have 5 hours to do something, take 4 of those hours and prepare and plan, then use that last hour to execute. Some companies want to be fast to market, get as much stuff tested as possible, and if it's only 70% correct, so be it. But if it fails, how do you know that it was the idea or the execution? For me, I prefer to be more patient and get most of the way there so that you're confident about your execution. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, the devil is in the details.